What are assessments? Do all townhouses, condos, and co-ops have them? This is really going to be a conversation about homeowners association dues and fees, also condo fees, dues. They have different names depending on where you look online.
Absolutely. So in this book, they're calling them assessments, but essentially she's talking about HOA and condo fees. For most homeowners in Northern Virginia, you can expect to pay an HOA fee or a condo fee because in 2022, 74% of all homes that sold in Northern Virginia were a part of an association.
When you're thinking about an association, you want to consider the fact that associations are attractive to local governments because the association kind of takes on some of the responsibilities that the government would take on, like snow removal, trash removal. When you're not in the HOA, that fee or service is managed by the local government. The way developers get their deals through the pipeline is by making these agreements with the local government that says, hey, look, we will take on this item for you if you approve the deal. And this is why you see such a high concentration of planned communities, HOAs, condominium associations, and the such. When you think about an association and you're coming up with the fee that you pay, it is the percentage of ownership you have in the association. So one way to look at it is that all of these amenities are considered common ownership between you and everyone else in the association. The way they come up with your particular fee is usually a square footage. Sometimes they even use the size of your lot. It just depends on what the bylaws say. So let's give like a fictitious example where there's 100 units, they're all the same size. Your unit, your percentage of ownership of the common area is going to be 1%. So that means that you get 1% of the fees and the expenses associated with HOA fees.
Now, depending on your association size, as I said, there are going to be a number of things those fees cover, but they don't just cover amenities. They also cover things, as Abraham alluded to earlier, snow removal, trash removal, but they also cover different things.
The lawn maintenance, there's
The lawn maintenance of the common area. Yes, the common area. So our association, with its vast size, there's a lot of, grass, but also they cover all the planting and planning for the area. We
right.
have our roads repaved quite often in our community.
Right, which could be seen as an expense that's not necessary. In a condominium association, one thing to consider that's quote unquote common area is going to be like the carpet that you walk on, the entryway, the mail room, the movie theater,
The
the
lobby
rooftop
even.
deck,
Mhm.
the library. All of these things are going to be percentage ownership that you actually have a responsibility in paying for.
Yeah, so another fee that may be unexpected when living in a HOA or a condominium is going to be when there are special assessments. So sometimes there are going to be things that exceed the annual budget that needs to be taken care of. That could be an unexpected repair when you're in a condo. Perhaps the roofs need to be replaced or the windows, and it's going to cost more than was budgeted for that year. So there may be a special assessment. On occasion, there is a lawsuit levied against the association for one reason or another, and as owners of the association, all of the homeowners are responsible for their share of that lawsuit. And so sometimes those assessments can last for just a few months and it'd be a few $100s. And there are other times when they'll last for several years and be thousands of dollars.
This information is going to be readily available in the minutes of the association, and it's imperative that you review the documents when you're going through your review period.
Yes. So what Abraham is speaking about as far as the review period is when you're buying a home that's a part of an association in the state of Virginia, you are required to receive the resale disclosure packet if you're buying a home that's in a HOA or a condo association. When you receive those documents, you're going to have 3 days to review them and void the contract for any reason. And it is so important that you review those documents. Many times we have buyers, all they want to know is, does the house have any violations? Are there any HOA violations? But the packet is rather large and there's going to be a lot of very important information within that packet. And when I say large, I mean hundreds of pages, usually 200 to 400 pages worth of documents. But it has everything you need to know about the association. They're going to have the financials, so you'll be able to take a look at the budget, the master insurance plan. They're going to have all the rules and regulations, the bylaws, and as I said, the HOA violations if there are any. But you want to make sure you read through all of that information because it's going to have things as far as where you can park versus where you can't. If you're buying into a condo association, association. What type of pets are allowed? Are there pet restrictions? Are there breed restrictions? Is there a cap on the number of pets you can have? So all of these things are going to be within those documents. And if you let that 3-day period expire, then you no longer have the opportunity to walk away. So if you get to the closing table and you find out that it turns out that your breed of dog is too large, you're just out of luck.
Now, when it comes to your fees, if you are late on your fees, then the association could foreclose on your property. Now, this is highly unlikely given the fact that most fees are not substantial, but you got to remember that the fees are paid by all of the other owners. So there isn't like this huge nest egg for people who don't pay their bills. So the if you don't pay your bills, that money comes from somewhere. So just keep that in mind, that paying your HOA fees is very important, and pay them on time, because there will be most likely a late fee levied
Mhm.
against you, and those late fees can add up. Oftentimes, so we're in Kingstown, when an owner doesn't pay their HOA dues, then they usually lose access to the fitness facility and the swimming pool.
Mhm.
Now, that's not that big of a deal for a lot of people because they don't use those services on a regular basis, but those fees will come to bite you in the end when you try to sell your property, because all of those fees are going to be due plus interest.
Yes. And speaking of cons, we have a list of actually some pros and cons of living in an association. And so, since he brought up the first con, we also want to talk about one of the things that I think is people's biggest gripe when it comes to association, which is going to be architectural review. So, anytime you want to make any type of change to your home on the exterior, you're going to have to submit an application for approval with your association. And that can be anything from installing new windows to staining your deck.
Another pro is that there are community events, and then there's also this community feel that comes with living in a larger association. So this isn't going to be relative for the smaller associations, because smaller associations really are just like you all are pooling your money together to manage the expenses of the road, the trash removal, snow removal. But in a larger association like Kingstown, like Cameron Station, Reston, Franklin Farm, those types of areas, you get this sense of, I belong to this neighborhood or this hood. You know, you almost have like this clique, and you even hear people when they're talking about their communities outside of the area, they have this sense of pride tied to ownership. So that's another reason why I think homeowners association, especially in Northern Virginia.
Well, another positive is also going to be that when you're a part of association, or homes that are a part of an association typically do better as far as maintaining property values. And that's largely tied to the fact that because of those rules and regulations, there's this expectation that the lawns will be well maintained, that the home will be pressure washed, and that there's just this cohesion of how the neighborhood should look. And it eases the burden on homeowners from having to talk to their neighbors about, their unkept grass, or about the fact that there are, how many cars parked in front of the house. So for that reason, because there's this expectation of, minimum maintenance when you're dealing with an association. At the same time, I want to go back to another con, which is that if you do not maintain the home, there will be fines and violations if you do not take care of those violations in a timely manner. So if you have slacked on pressure washing your house, or if you have not cut your grass over the spring and summertime, they will let you know, and they give you usually 30 days or so to come into compliance. But if not, then you will be assessed a fine.
I also want to just make a note here. When you're buying a home, there is like this unspoken rule that you will maintain your property and your neighbors will maintain their properties, because you all have a vested interest in the community looking a certain way so that you can extract your value out of the property in the future, right? When you think about curb appeal, too often curb appeal is this idea that people believe is just tied to a singular property. So if I get my grass together, if I paint the front of my house, if I make sure my shutters are all in good condition, then I have no problems. That's just not the case. When buyers roll through a neighborhood, they are taking in and judging everyone's home as a group, right? So
Mhm.
there's almost like this other category as far as how does the neighborhood look? What is the feel and character of the neighborhood that you're kind of participating in when you purchase a property. This is also another reason why a lot of people dislike having renters in their community, because people have this notion that renters do not have the same pride of ownership as a homeowner will have. This isn't to say that that is true, but there is some connection to a homeowner has this future goal of extracting some type of equity out of the property. So they're much more vested in the process of maintaining the community feel.
Well, that's, I think, all we have for HOAs.